Snake, try to remember some of the basics of CQC.
Commencing virtuous mission now.
If you saw my video on the Sorrow fight in Metal Gear Solid 3, you'll notice that I didn't use any footage from Delta. Well, I've tried Delta. Don't ask me how I got it. But I got up to a little after the virtuous mission, and that's mostly due to the fact that my game keeps crashing if I look at it funny. But I'm not taking points away from the game for that, considering the factors in which I got the game. The truth is, I'm not really feeling Delta. This isn't a new thing bad, old thing good bit for me, or my attempt to go full Crowbcat. Remember kids, you never go full Crowbcat. My issue with Delta is that I've played MGS3 enough times to know the timing for certain animations, and they're completely different in the remake, and it's throwing me off. I'll start with something simple. Delta Snake has a bit of inertia when you're moving from a dead stop compared to Classic Snake. It's not like wading through mud, but it can count a full second from going full tilt on the left stick to Snake finally moving from his starting position. In contrast, Classic Snake has some startup, but he moves as soon as the game senses any pressure on the left stick. And if there's any argument about how being on a different engine is going to cause the games to feel different, here's Snake moving in Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain. Once again, there's startup, but is moving once the game senses pressure on the left stick. These differences get more and more pronounced when you engage with enemies. Delta added new animations for CQC takedowns. They're fancy looking, but again, their timing is different from what I'm used to in the older versions, and it makes me feel like I'm more exposed compared to the faster takedowns in Snake Eater. Moving a body also has new animations, and they also screw with my sense of timing. It feels like it takes forever to get Snake to pick up a body and drag it somewhere. I think the reasoning for the new animation timings is to sell the weight that Snake is literally throwing around when he does CQC. I have to believe that it was a conscious decision on Koji Pro's part when they sped up the CQC animations in MGS5. Because although they might look absurd in motion, they feel like the right speed in practice. Okay, so directly handling enemies is a sticking point for me. What if I just rely on my guns to deal with them? Well, then I have to address the bullet drop problem. This is probably going to get patched in updates, but the bullet drop in Delta completely changes how I aim my guns. In Snake Eater, all I had to do with my tranq gun was line up the front sight on an enemy's head and pull the trigger. But the bullet drop in Delta shortens the arc that tranq gun shot, so now I have to aim higher than I'm used to in first-person view to land the same hits. The problem with this is that most of the target is obscured by Snake's view model, effectively making first-person view useless. Again, just for contrast, here's me using the tranq gun in Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain. There is definitely bullet drop in these games, but not so much as to make the first-person view feel like a hindrance instead of a tool. Thing is, you can avoid this entirely by using the third-person over-the-shoulder view instead. This is somehow a more consistent method than using the gun's actual sights, and you can see the arc of the round to adjust your follow-up shots accordingly. All my other complaints about Delta are minutiae, like how the distance between these patches of ground in the Croc Swamp feel further away than in Classic, so I can't roll past the mud and get the extra suppressor for the tranq gun before the nearby Croc moves towards Snake. Also, with how enemy AI pathfinding works now, I can't replicate the door-hugging strat during the Ocelot unit fight.
I see him!
However, I can go back to Snake Eater and replicate this strat I developed specifically for Delta. I'm not saying I want to write off Delta entirely. In fact, I think the modern controls have brought some cool new additions. Since the D-pad now serves as a quick action menu for weapons, equipment, camouflage, and radio frequencies, Delta repurposed L1 to be a mode shift to go into stalking mode. Snake shifts his stance and the camera puts on a subtle vignette to indicate that Snake will move slower and more quietly than he normally does. I like how the radio screen shows Snake's model in detail instead of the abstracted version from Snake Eater. Combined with how mud clings onto Snake and looks really chunky, it's cool to see Delta maintain that continuity into the radio screen. I like that the switch on Snake's radio actually has geometry now, instead of being a flat texture in Snake Eater. I do think some character models look better than others. Snake obviously looks good, and I like Vulcan and Delta because his scars actually carve into his face. The scars on his PS2 model always look like Mike Tyson's face tattoo to me. Personally, I'm not really concerned with the game's looks, and I'm sick of seeing people compare shots of the cemetery at the end of the game. I'm more concerned about how to classify Delta as a remake. When I booted the game and saw the new main menu screen, I knew exactly what it reminded me of. This is the same shot as a new main menu for the Resident Evil 4 remake, down to the slow push-in of the shot. I don't doubt for a minute that Konami looked at the RE makes as inspo for both Silent Hill 2 and Delta, but that actually makes it harder for me to classify Delta. Say what you will about RE2, 3, and 4, but you can't say that they're one-to-one facsimiles of their old-gen counterparts. Even though 4 paved the way for the more action-oriented control scheme of the modern entries, 4 Classic does not have the same movement, controls, or level design as 4 Remake. Different set pieces, different emphasis on character writing, and different overall tone. If you met someone who only played the RE makes and suggested try out the Classic iterations just so they can appreciate the differences between versions, there would be some merit to that pitch, because they're essentially different experiences recounting similar events. That's not the case with Delta. I don't think the Delta team bears any ill will towards Koji Pro. Quite the opposite, in fact, as they kept the credits in the opening cutscene and didn't scrub Kojima's name. But the fact that Delta is a one-to-one facsimile of Snake Eater and Subsistence, with a new control scheme and a facelift for the visuals, why would someone who's only played Delta ever want to go back to Snake Eater? Me telling you that Snake Eater handles differently from Delta won't be enough to convince you to replay a game you just beat, especially if you think Delta looks and plays better than Snake Eater. I've thought about what remake Delta reminds me of, and the best analogy I could come up with is SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. Both games are faithful recreations of their original counterparts to an exhaustive degree, but no matter how painstaking their efforts are in recreating the same experience, the nuances between versions jump out to people who played both versions, and that breaks the illusion that they're having the same experience all over again. I can and have jumped between RE4's remake and classic versions without any difficulty, because they're so different from each other that one does not override the other in my head. With Delta, not only did I have to remap the controls so they somewhat resemble what I'm used to with Snake Eater, but I've pulled both triggers, wanting to open up either the item or weapon menus, forgetting that Delta's control scheme uses the D-pad for those actions. And the thing with the SpongeBob games is that the original Bikini Bottom isn't available on modern platforms, so the only way to play it in current year is through Rehydrated, justifying its existence. But you can get Snake Eater on modern platforms via the Master Collection, so Delta is essentially competing with the version of itself in the current market. And I can't tell if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I can see the argument for it being a two-cake situation, but I can also see the argument for it being another Prey 2017 moment. And then there's the whole games are art angle, where if you were to talk in film terms, you wouldn't say you've experienced Hitchcock Psycho by watching Van Sant Psycho, even though they're shot-for-shot counterparts. I thought about ending this video with a cheeky line from Death Stranding.
Won't be long before we're able to send all kinds of things through the wire.
Except anything original. Or that's got a soul. Nothing real. Just copies.
But that felt like I would have gone for Crowbcat. Spiritually, I can't hate Delta. Every challenge thrown at the Delta team that would have tripped up any other studio doing a remake was met with the best possible response. Oh, they removed the sepia filter that made Snake Eater so iconic. It's a filter you can toggle. Oh, no Snake vs. Monkeys? No Guy Savage? Seth Rogen chortle? I wrote that out of my script, by the way. Nope, the apes are back, and they even brought Platinum on to do the Guy Savage segment, which is a cute bit, I can't lie. If you were really to press me on how I feel about Delta's existence, I'd say I'm in the two cakes camp, because if I want to play MGS3, I just get the Master Collection, or run the HD remaster on Xenia like I've been doing this whole time. And if playing Delta is what gets people to appreciate Kojima's writing, besides treating MGS2 as idiocracy for gamers, then it's a net benefit, right? Anyways, go play Metal Gear Solid 3. I don't care which version. You know, I may have spoke too soon. There might actually be a reason to justify playing Delta.
America's truly a frightening country.
What is that stance? Huh. That gun.
Are we taking him with us?
No, this one is still just a child. Too pure for us Cobras.
You're crocked, aren't you?
Does it look that strange to you?
No. I'm the same way. Scars all over.
Can I see?
No.
I'll bet if I kissed you, you'd taste like a wild beast.